My name's Eben. I'm an alcoholic.
Hi, Eben.
Partying in the dark in here, man. What's going on? That's how you guys roll? Keeping it like the old bar. Alright, what is this? Like the freaking cave? Stalagmite? Are we underwater in here? Is that the space? Cool.
Yeah, all of it.
Whatever you want it to be. 4 years ago today, I cut my hand surfing and severed a nerve, and it was bleeding profusely down there at Old Lindemar Beach, and went and got my hand sewn up, and that led to 2 more surgeries over the next year or so. And in some ways it was sort of a restart for my recovery. After the second surgery, I believe, first or second one, I actually can't remember now. It must have been the second one. They gave me 2 Klonopin in the post-op, which, you know, I mean, it's totally fine. I was in severe pain in a medical hospital with experts around, and I felt like I was following directions and taking proper advice with support, and I got high. Blew my mind. 17 years sober, and I was, for all intents and purposes, loaded. And I had a spiritual experience. I basically saw God, you know, and I couldn't believe it because I've had a child, you know, I've gotten married, I've had successes in life, I've had very spiritual experiences, very deep and meaningful and palpable spiritual experiences in Alcoholics Anonymous, and I know what true joy feels like, and I know what the highs of sobriety feel like, and I was just blown away that you could take a pill for that. I had no idea. You know, they say that our disease progresses while we're sober, you know, and you know, I know that 21 years ago, alcohol and drugs were solving my problems. You know, they were also creating my problems, which is why it becomes this vicious cycle. But I couldn't believe it. I could not believe how spiritual it was, you know. And Carl Jung talks about this, and it's been brought up in AA circles. Carl Jung is name-checked in the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous, and he talked about the fact that we call spirits, liquor spirits, in that, you know, in his estimation, which I think, you know, Bill was a fan of his enough to put him in the big book, you know, there was this idea that you know, the alcoholic is chasing this essential spiritual experience that for us is a normal reaction, but for the normal people out there, for the non-alcoholics, that's an abnormal reaction that we can put a substance into our body, you know, and just through our own physiology, we can experience relief on a deep spiritual level. And it was crazy, you know, it rocked my world. And it was great for a second, in a sense. I mean, my wife was there, and I just had this overwhelming sense of, God, I love my wife, I love my life, I love my dog, I love my family, everything's okay. And as I said already, I could not believe that they had a pill for that. You know, who knew? Well, everybody sitting in this room knows. What can I say? It had been 17 years, I forgot. And I don't think I had the context to put it into 17 years ago, because I hadn't had a spiritual awakening, and I hadn't gone through, and I wasn't in touch with that experience, and I had no context for it until after coming in here and going through the steps and having a deep, fundamental experience of God. So I in no way want this to be a pitch for ingesting substances, and I will pivot right into an illustration of that point, which was that they gave me a prescription of Vicodin, which I picked up at the pharmacy down over here in Lindemar. And I think, well, I didn't need to take one that day. I stayed home from work the next day and just took Advil. Maybe I took one of the Vicodin. I guess I did. Okay, I took one of the Vicodin, and then I took one at night. And I basically just slept the whole time. So I was recovering. I was respecting my recovery. My wife was holding the painkillers. And I was respecting my physical recovery. I was laying low. I was not moving. I was keeping my hand elevated. And the pain was manageable. And I basically just rested physically. The next day came around, and I felt like I was ready to go back to work. Well, the bottle said, don't take this and operate heavy machinery, so I didn't take it in the morning. I just took the Advil, and I went to work. But I brought the bottle with me, just in case. You know, like a good junkie, can't leave the issue at home, you know, whatever psychological thing was going on there. But I brought the bottle with me, even though I knew I couldn't take it at work because I had to drive home. Wasn't really quite sure how to cross that one, so that gives you an idea right there. I already knew, rationally, I shouldn't do it, but I did it anyways because I'm powerless over drugs and alcohol. So the mind came up with a justification, a rationalization, and I brought the bottle with me to work, knowing that it was none too smart. Well, I spent the whole day ruminating about the pills over and over and over. So the craving, the obsession had kicked in. After 2 Klonopin and 2 Vicodin, I was obsessed again. I could not stop thinking about it the whole day long. To the point where I finally got home, and I had been ruminating about this so intensely and so circularly for so long that I was convinced that I had relapsed, that I had taken a number of the pills and more than had been prescribed to me. Well, I didn't want that, so I took the pills, I poured them all out, and I counted every single one of them. And I had not taken a single pill that day. I had not taken a single pill, yet my mind was so obsessed and running and rolling so hard that I had completely convinced myself that I had lost 17 years of sobriety and that I had relapsed. And at that moment, I was so clearly convinced that I am an alcoholic and a drug addict that all I can say is, thank you, God, for hurting my hand, for letting me have my hand cut, for putting me in this position where I got put on this medication and letting me go through that process in essentially, well, with the support that I have in my life, which includes my family, my AA support group, and my higher power, So I took the pills, and I gave them to my wife, and I said, get these things away from me. Flush them down the toilet. I'm not taking any more of these because I can't. I have this mental obsession and this physical craving that I'm powerless over. It is stronger than me, and it would drive me insane. I mean, it was there. My illustration here is there is no possible way I could have enjoyed the experience of getting loaded after 17 years. And I'd heard people talk about it, and I'll tell you what, after 17 years, I started, one starts to wonder, was I really an alcoholic, or the classic, maybe I could do just one, you know? Maybe I could just drink. No way, man. That's all it took. And I was right. I just did step one right then. I was just 100% convinced that I'm a stone cold alcoholic, and I am powerless over this addiction, over alcohol, and I need help. I cannot do this alone. I cannot fix me. You know, I need the help of the fellowship. I need the help of the program, the 12 steps that's described in the big book. And I need my family. I need a lot of help. I need a lot of support. And there's work to be done. So what happened was I essentially did step one all over again in this really powerful way. Really powerful way. I mean, it put a fire under me. I was like, holy crap, it's been 17 years. And all of a sudden, I got clarity again. I know who I am, you know? Like the caterpillar in Alice in Wonderland, who are you? I saw it clearly as could be. I am an alcoholic. And 17 years of sobriety has not cured me from that disease. I am a recovered alcoholic. I've gone through the process. When alcohol is removed from me, the obsession has been lifted. But in that particular situation, it came back. And I was fucked up physically. So I couldn't do anything. I'm a guy I'm an alcoholic, man. I wake up in the morning, my mind wakes up before I do, and it's already going, and it's already planning, and it's already starting the day before my physical self ever hits my feet hit the floor. So my mind's going. And if I'm not up surfing or working or studying or playing guitar or achieving something as a good, working class, waspy American Protestant work ethic, if I'm not going, I'm a piece of crap, That's what my alcoholism tells me. That's what my society subtly tells me. That's what the television overtly and subtly tells me, that if I'm not achieving something, I'm not worthy, and that's this emptiness. Maybe that's part of alcoholism too. I think it's something that affects more than just alcoholics. But for me, and I feel like, from what I understand of other alcoholics, I have this heightened sense of self-centeredness, this, so I couldn't do anything. I couldn't surf. 6 o'clock in the morning, I'm laying on the couch. It's the weekend now. I can't go anywhere. I can't do anything. I got to respect my physical recovery. So I started meditating, The irony of this situation is that days before, the few days leading up to that second surgery, I went to the Monday night meeting and I picked up the pamphlet on substances other than alcohol. There's 2 pamphlets that we have. One of them is substances other than alcohol, and the other one is something in that same realm. And maybe it's like prescription, dealing with prescriptions or something. But it seems now, you're like, of course you did that. You were getting a surgery. You were preparing. But I can tell you that there was a mental disconnect. I was not thinking about the surgery. I was just, doing AA and wanting to read stuff and study. And I'd grabbed both of those pamphlets and I'd read them both. And that was the crazy thing. Which again sounds like, well, duh, of course you did that to prepare for your surgery. But I can tell you that it seemed, at least at the time, that it was more just like this thought, it just happened kind of a thing. So I had somehow prepared myself for what I was facing. And it's interesting because that pamphlet says, for anybody that now is sitting in here totally uncomfortable, like, why is this guy talking about prescription drugs in an AA meeting? I mean, look, if you're feeling uncomfortable about it, 100% apologize. I'm sorry. I do not want to bum anybody out. But it does speak to it in that pamphlet. And it says that these prescription drugs can cut us off from our spirituality, which leads to relapse in alcohol. So that's my little justification. Please forgive me if I've offended anybody. And it certainly had a tremendous effect on me. So there I was. I couldn't do anything. I started doing a morning inventory. I started reading basically 83 through 88 in the big book, steps 10 and 11 on a daily basis. I started to recite the St. Francis prayer on a daily basis. And I just got hungry for AA. You know, I just rocketed into the fourth dimension and wanting to carry the message of Alcoholics Anonymous and know more and more about the actual message of Alcoholics Anonymous, where it came from, why does it work? Is it, you know, what's the background? What's Bill's real story? What was Bob's story? So there's all this great literature that's available beyond just the big book, which I read, you know, over and over as well. But, you know, I picked up a copy of that book, Pass It On, which is essentially the, what do they call that? The authorized biography of Bill Wilson, which is put out by World Service, by, you know, the same people that put out the big book. And it just blew my mind. It's such a fantastic book. I mean, I just suggest it to anybody. It just rocketed me into a whole other depth of relationship with Alcoholics Anonymous. And the message that everybody here is a healer, and everybody here has a story, and that this thing is passed on by us suffering greatly and sharing that suffering with one another and recovering greatly and sharing that recovery with each other. And that this is, you know, not just a duty, but a privilege and a source of joy and a duty, you know. And it just, you know, at the time, maybe I wasn't as connected before that, you know, but at that point, man, I just got the fire. And I read, and there's some really funny stuff in that book. I mean, don't think that it's all serious either. I mean, there's crazy shit in that book. I mean, there's a whole chapter on Bill taking LSD, which happened in sobriety in the 50s, before the 60s. This was before all the hippie stuff, which was great. That's a whole other story. But this was for research on Alcoholics Anonymous, you know, research for having a synthetic spiritual experience, which, dare I say, he more or less predicated for much of the rest of this country 10, 15 years later. And that's a whole other story as well. And there's another chapter in there that is really, I mean, he was out there. He was pretty trippy. There's a chapter in there where he talks about this whole full body apparition that he saw. Like, he really believed in ghosts. They were kind of into they would do these Ouija board sessions. And I mean, the only reason I bring this up is just because I think people get the sense of Bill that he was really square and Bob was really square, and there were these uptight white dudes from, you know, New England, and they had some wild ideas, you know, spiritual ideas. And what is more wild than spirituality, anyways, you know? So, not to get on too much of a tangent about that, but but just to say that I highly encourage reading that, you know, reading those books and finding out the real history of AA and finding out how democratic and how populist of a movement this truly is. That we, you know, the reason why we have a GSR is because we are the voice. Like, us individual members, well, you know, and the group's conscience, these are the things that make up AA. AA is not an organization that we're a part of. We are the organization. AA is us. We are AA. So I like to own my place in here, you know. I'm proprietary about my membership in Alcoholics Anonymous. This is my Alcoholics Anonymous. This isn't just a fellowship that I go to and get to be a member of. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's what we make it. So those are great lessons that I learned in reading those books. As I continued to meditate, and for me it was real, you know. I continued reading the 12 and 12 in the big book, and just more and more seeing the beautiful and complete spiritual teaching of our literature, in that it's about coming to know God and experience God firsthand, you know, and that this movement is such a powerful movement because it is a secular movement. There are no priests, there's no clergy, there's no hierarchy in here of spiritual experience. My spiritual experience that I had of truly coming to know God is just as important as everybody else's experience in here, and yours just as important as mine or anybody else that's ever walked the earth as far as I'm concerned, but certainly anybody that's ever come into AA, and that includes Bob and Bill too, you know. And I think that's what they said, essentially, you know, was that I come in here to come to know God through these steps, and to pass that on to other people and to teach people how to live a spiritual life. And I've been thinking about this a lot lately because, and I've said this many times, and I think many people have, that, you know, that I didn't come to AA to become good. You know what I mean? And the resistance there was that, you know, this isn't a moralistic, we're going to tell you that you're a bad person, you got to act a certain way to be good, like they do in certain religious situations, you know. But the irony of that is as time has gone on, what I'm seeing more and more, especially today, in terms of my spiritual development and my spiritual practice, is that I did come to AA to become good. I do want to be a good person. And that when I turn my will and my life over to God as I understand Him, when I do that third step, what guides me is my, you know, my moral core of goodness, of love and tolerance is our guide, right? As it says in the big book, is our code. So what does that mean? Do I walk around and judge other people? Well, everybody does, of course. I mean, that's part of the human condition. But what I'm saying is that I know for myself that I can be a really shitty person. And I don't want to be a shitty person. It doesn't feel good. I mean, that's the spirit. That's where inventory comes in. When I do that daily inventory, when I sit quietly in meditation, the shitty things that I've done the day prior come back to me. And that's where I face the fear. What's the fear underneath that? What's the pain? What am I running away from? What am I holding on to that I need to let go of? You know, what am I taking too seriously? Is really the key so often. But what I realize is that by doing that inventory, I'm able to meet situations as a quote-unquote good person, meaning a kind and loving and tolerant person. You know, it's not good in this like, you know, you're a bad person, you know, or I'm a bad person. It's I'm acting like a bad person. You know what I'm saying? Do you understand the distinction I'm making? And I think it's powerful, and I think it's important. And that's what I get from being able to take that inventory and go out and make those amends and clear away that stuff between me and you, so that when I see you again, I can be loving and kind and tolerant instead of being rigid and judgmental and hateful, which just tends to so much be the general tenor of our society right now, especially in America. You know, everybody's judging everybody else. Everybody is so critical. We've entered this age of criticism. And everybody has gotten to the place where we all, if we're not happy, something's wrong. You know what I mean? And it's just like, I'm not, you know, we're never going to be completely happy or satisfied by outside circumstances. But who is going out there and saying, I love you? Who's going out there and saying, how are we the same? You know what I mean? And that's what I want to bring to the world. And that's what I get from working the steps. All of the drama, the social media and the politics and the finger pointing and the building the walls. I want to build bridges. I want to tear down walls, you know, on an interpersonal level. Whenever I'm judging people, I'm just putting a wall up. You're you and I'm me. It's us and it's them. Who's going out into the world right now and saying, you're me and I'm you. I love you. What can I do for you? Not what am I unsatisfied about? You know what I mean? And look, I'm not trying to justify injustice. That needs to be addressed as well, you know. And that's just one of the teachings of spirituality I've come to understand. You know, the opposite may also be true. You know, I don't need to be stuck in set ideas. As long as I keep taking inventory, checking my own behavior, facing my fears, and trying to treat people with love and kindness and tolerance and compassion, I'm experiencing God on a daily basis, you know. So I'm going to end right there. Thank you very much.